Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Tanya Carroll Richardson. And she's here today to share with us her new book, Self-Care for Empaths. 100 activities to help you relax, recharge, and rebalance your life. Now, many of you know Tanya. She's been on the show before. She's a self-improvement and spiritual author and professional intuitive. She's been writing about angels and interviewing people about their encounters with angels for over a decade. And she's a regular contributor to MindBodyGreen and has been featured on media nationwide. So let's welcome to the show, Tanya Carroll Richardson.
Thank you for having me on again.
Oh my goodness, it's always such a joy to spend time with you. And I was so excited about this new book. So what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I was actually, I'm really fascinated with sensitive people. I'm a professional intuitive, and I've written 7 nonfiction books now, several about angels, and I have clients that come to me for intuitive sessions one-on-one. And obviously, most of the people who come to me are sensitive. That's usually the kind of person that's attracted to an intuitive or someone who uses their intuition professionally. So, being sensitive, you might hear that word a lot thrown around in culture, but it basically just means that you are hyper perceptive. So you just pick up on more, whether that's the energy and emotions of other people or the physical stimuli in the room, like the temperature, the lighting, the loud noise. So I'm really fascinated by sensitive people, being a sensitive person myself, and then having done thousands of readings with sensitive clients. So I originally wrote a book last year, or actually it came out in 2020, called Are You an Earth Angel? That was about sensitive people who I feel like are earth angels. And then Simon & Schuster actually approached me at the end of 2019 to write a book about empaths. And they wanted it to be about self-care, which I was really excited about because I feel that is the key for empaths to manage their sensitivity and make the most of their sensitivity is actually through their self-care practices.
Well, I found that so fascinating because a lot of times empaths, and I'll have you break down what an empath is here in just a minute, but empaths get kind of a little bit put on the back burner when it comes to their own self-care. And I feel like that's so important. You just hit like such a huge piece.
Yeah. And some people, I think we get caught up in, when we talk about intuition or being sensitive, we're thinking of all the wonderful mystical stuff of, getting the psychic information and picking up on other people's emotions and the energy of a room, or getting intuitive hits and downloads through the 4 psychic pathways, which I talk about in this book and in all my other books. But ironically, what makes empaths have a stronger connection to their sensitivity and able to manage it and make the most of it is those very grounding, earthy practices of self-care, which some of them are as basic as eating a clean diet, taking the supplements you need, getting rest. And like you were saying, sensitive people can sometimes be quite compassionate because they really can feel the energy and emotions of others. So if someone in their life is suffering or going through a difficult time, they're feeling it in their own system, which can make them more apt to want to focus on other people or help other people. Nothing wrong with that, but it is that reminder that you really have to put yourself first, come home to your own energy and emotions. Otherwise, as an empath, it's very easy to be scattered and in other people's energy or to become frazzled or overwhelmed. So when you really have some lovely routines that are self-care practices, it simply keeps you grounded in your own energy.
So why don't you share with us just kind of the nuts and bolts of what an empath is?
Sure. So an empath is someone, again, who's hyper perceptive and particularly picks up a lot on other people's energies and emotions. So this is the psychic pathway called clairsentience, and it's the feeling psychic pathway. So it's when you feel intuitive information in your own system. So that could be walking into a room and sensing your manager is anxious and you're actually feeling their anxiety in your own body. Or it can even be physical sensations like, sometimes I'll have a client that gets on the phone with me and my knees will ache for a second. And I'll say, has there been something going on with your knees? And they'll say, yes. So luckily that only lasts for me for a few seconds, but it's just, again, there to give me the intuitive information. So empaths are hyperperceptive, and they're especially sensitive to picking up on the energies and emotions of other people, the collective, groups of people, physical spaces, the energy that's in a physical space. And again, the thing with empaths is they're feeling it in their own system. So they're feeling it quite intimately and immediately.
So why is this book and the information in it more important for empaths and when they look at their path of enlightenment? Why is this so important for us today more than ever?
Right. Good question. And I guess the answer is within your wise question. Probably today more than ever because 2020 has been a very intense, energetic year. There's been a lot happening in the collective, a lot of trauma in the collective. So even more important for empaths to know when to tune in and tune out of others, when to tune in and tune out of the collective, and how to even practice something I call in the book mindful heartbreak, which is, I do want to tune into the suffering and pain of the world and other people occasionally. That's part of being an empath, and it can inform my actions and my belief system. So it's really an important time to get used to navigating the energy of yourself and other people more than others. And I think even before 2020, my clients this year have been telling me, I was just going at a breakneck speed, at the beginning of 2020 and the end of 2019. And I think, that's how modern life is. It speeds up. There's more expected of us. There's more information coming in about the collective. The people in our lives, we can connect with them more easily and immediately. So there's so much going on that we really have to learn in the modern world, whether it's 2020 or 2019 or 2021, how to stay in our own energy and when we tune in and when we tune out, and how to do that more mindfully.
In your book, you say being an empath is simply the way you are set to experience life. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's really, I wanted to kind of demystify the word empath because I think, and I don't think this is right or wrong. I think everybody, the wonderful thing I think about liking different authors or different spiritual teachers or different experts is everybody has a piece of the puzzle, and sometimes everybody has their own take on something. And I think that's wonderful. But I didn't want empaths to feel that, because you're an empath, I don't think that makes you any more special than anyone else. I don't think that makes you more enlightened, more spiritually gifted. Sorry. You are, in my opinion, everyone is an amazing, amazing, powerful spiritual being. Some people happen to have this heightened sensitivity. So it doesn't make you, that you have to run out and be a healer, or you have to run out and love crystals, or you have to be a certain type of person. Just like it doesn't make you more special than anyone else. What it simply means is you were wired to feel and perceive more. Now, sometimes people will, sensitivity is not static. So sometimes people will awaken to their sensitivity later in life. Or sometimes people will go through a sensitivity growth spurt where suddenly they will be much more sensitive than they were in the past. So if you, only kind of start identifying with being a sensitive person at the age of 60, great. It doesn't mean that, there was something wrong where, it's just that sometimes we can awaken to our sensitivity at different times. We can go through sensitivity growth spurts. But I think that there are a lot of people who were just naturally wired to be more sensitive. And it's kind of the way they came into life. And, there's lots of Judith Orloff is a famous psychologist, psychiatrist that talks about sensitivity and empaths. So there is, scientific, kind of more medically based Western study of this stuff as well. And it's a fascinating emerging field that we're kind of learning more and more about, and people are talking and writing about more and more, which is fun.
Yeah, we're in such a great age, where they're talking so much about empaths. Empaths are no longer in the closet. They've been able to come out and have discussions about their feelings and what they're sensing. And I felt that your book was very helpful for people on every level of their path. Maybe someone who's new, people who know they're empaths and are just looking for ways to kind of recharge. You kind of offer a little bit of everything for everybody.
Oh, thank you. One of the main thing, I'm always big on teaching the 4 psychic pathways, which are clairaudience, where you hear a voice in your mind giving you intuitive guidance. Claircognizance, this is a common one where you just get the breakthrough thoughts, the aha ideas, like, wow, I just know how to handle that, or wow, I just got a download about this person. Clairsentience is that psychic pathway that empaths are all strong in, where they're feeling things. And then clairvoyance, the seeing psychic pathway, where you get images in your mind. So I wanted to help empaths who are a little more naturally intuitive understand their intuitive system, and also learn how to mindfully tune in and tune out, because I think that's something that empaths struggle with, because they are wired to naturally tune in. So giving empaths tools and ideas about how to discern, do I want to tune in or tune out in this situation? And then how do I do that was a big driving force for me in the book.
So I really liked how you talked about everyone is very equal when we look at spirituality, because I think a lot of times people have the tendency to kind of compare. It's like, oh, well, I may be clairaudient, but I'm not clairvoyant, or I don't have any of the clairs, so I don't know what I'm doing. So and I think a lot of times people have, they compare. There's a lot of, thinking it should look a certain way when maybe it's just being quiet and really listening and having that connection.
Yeah, I think that everyone's intuitive system is amazingly unique. And sometimes, this is something I talk about in my book, Angel Intuition, which is a book I did with Llewellyn, which is all about intuition, is that the more you kind of practice, using your intuition, trusting it, and just learn about it, reading books or taking classes about it, the more your intuition will naturally develop and grow. So, if you're one of those people, like you just said, that's like, gosh, I don't know if I have any of the clairs open, I think you will in time if you just start to get into this stuff a little bit more. But to your point, everyone has a unique intuitive system. So you don't have to feel that, oh, I've got to have this psychic pathway open, or if I don't have a strong intuition. And, again, I always stress that in all of my books and teachings, that I really think we're all special and we're all pieces of a puzzle. So no puzzle piece is made exactly the same, because that's how you complete the larger picture. And I think human beings are that way too.
So I'm going to put you on the hot seat a little bit. So why do empaths need special care?
Well, because their system is more easily overwhelmed. So when we talk about empaths being hyperperceptive, that simply means you're perceiving more. So let's say you go to a party with your friend, and your friend is maybe not as sensitive, and you're talking to people, there's music. This is not 2020, obviously. Let's go beyond 2020 when we can go to parties again. But that kind of a stimulation, or you're at a concert and you're there with a friend, and it's you love the artist, the music, there's people all around you, it's wonderful. Your friend who's not as sensitive will her energetic or emotional, or his or her energetic or emotional system will recover more quickly. And they'll be ready for the next big event, because their system isn't picking up on as much. So when you go into any situation, whether it's to the office, to the grocery store, to a family reunion, whatever it is, you are picking up on more emotional, energetic stimuli from the people around you and even the physical stimuli. So that means that the empath is more easily overwhelmed and drained. Now, that doesn't mean you need to just isolate. That is not good either, because empaths are wired to feel other people so intimately that it's very nourishing to be around people and interacting with people. So it's not about isolating, it's about finding that nice balance and realizing when your system is overwhelmed, frazzled, what got you there, and then just doing what I call is retreat and recover time. That's just where you say, look, my system's overwhelmed, I'm frazzled, I need to go into some low stimulation activities, where there's just not as much to absorb. It doesn't mean you have to be alone. It could be doing like a puzzle with your kids or your partner, or snuggling in bed with someone and reading, or it can just be taking a walk by yourself in nature. But it's something where there's low level of stimulation, so your system can simply recover from everything it's been perceiving.
A lot of what you're talking about sounds like grounding. Is that something that they really should be focusing on?
Well, I think to be grounded to me is to feel calm and confident and centered, and on our good days, we feel that way, hopefully, but we all have times where we don't feel grounded and we feel frazzled, we feel overwhelmed, we feel scattered. And really, to being grounded is, I think, when your system isn't overstimulated or hasn't reached its max for stimulation. So nothing wrong with feeling ungrounded. That happens to all of us. It's just taking a beat when you feel that way and saying, how do I come home to myself? Do I need a snack to help ground myself? Do I need to pull an oracle card or be my own energy for 10 minutes? Do I need a timeout from the kids, for 10 minutes to ground myself? How can I get myself back home to me?
Yeah, that's so important. And I love, my goodness, you have like exercises people can do for grounding. And one really kind of stuck out is about like how to create the energy for the day. And I love that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I wanted to empower empaths because I think, again, sometimes culturally we hear a lot of things of like, oh, empaths have to protect themselves, they have to watch out. And not that any of that isn't true, but I think sometimes it's overemphasized, and then it makes people feel afraid of being an empath. It's like, oh, this is this terrible thing that's happened to me, I'm an empath. And it's not terrible at all. It's wonderful. And one of the ways to empower yourself and look at it from a positive angle is to say, look, if I'm so sensitive to energy, then simply exposing myself to yummy energy is going to make me feel that energy in myself. So let me, watch a great, TED Talk for 15 minutes at the start of the day, or let me pull an inspirational oracle card, or let me read a really positive, positive, inspiring book at night for 20 minutes before bed. Empaths can so easily pick up on energy that if they use that to mindfully expose themselves to something that's nourishing, then, hey, that's an amazing ability.
Yeah, what a great gift that is. And I love how you also talk about, because, you're so right. Gosh, so many people say, oh, I'm an empath, I can't go out in large crowds, or I can't be around people. And so when you hear this, you think, oh my gosh, it's a real negative thing, when there's so much positive that goes with it.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much positive that goes with it. And I think in those instances, I have a couple of things to share with empaths. One, I think, everybody's different, just like having different intuitive systems. So some empaths will say, oh my God, I just can't stand doing crowds. And other empaths will say, as long as I'm not overwhelmed or overstimulated and run down, I'm pretty okay with crowds. In fact, I kind of like crowds sometimes. So remember, your own personality, your own self will dictate some of this. So there's a lot of wiggle room. And also, I think it's sometimes useful as an empath to expose yourself to different levels of stimulation to kind of build up a callus in a way. Because sometimes, and this happens in all areas of our lives, we think, oh, I can't write a book. what? Are you crazy? And then we get a book contract and we write it and we're like, hey, I actually could write a book. So I think it's sometimes stepping outside of your comfort zone. And, sometimes I will have clients who are nursing students and they're very nervous to walk into a hospital because they are an empath or they are sensitive. But then after, working in a hospital for a year or two, they just get used to that level of stimulation. It doesn't overwhelm them anymore. So remember that sometimes, you can get used to things. Like if you marry someone and they have a huge family and you're like, oh my gosh, these big family gatherings are going to overwhelm me. In time, you might love those big family gatherings and you'll be used to it.
Yeah, that's one thing that, and you can see a benefit of being able to connect with people and being in crowds and not really having to, kind of, isolate yourself in order to not feel what's going on.
Right. And I think there are tricks that you can do. And I talk about that in the book a little bit. Like, let's say you're walking into a grocery store. And again, like you have said, I think in the interview, it depends on where you're feeling that day. Maybe you've just been really frazzled and overwhelmed and drained, but you're like, I've got to run to that grocery store and get some healthy snacks for the week. It's going to help ground me. And you go in, and instead of focusing on all the noise and the energy around you, maybe you just really mindfully focus on the produce and kind of slow down as you're walking and like, this is lovely. And there's some nice music playing in here. I'm not focused on the people who are harried around me or all of that energy. So remember, it's also where you put your focus on. I say in the book, where your focus goes, your energy flows. So remember, you do have a lot of control about what you focus on as well.
Do you ever, when you're in large groups and you feel this, disconnect, do you ever do like short little blessings or prayers for people that's coming from? Because my gosh, they must be having a really tough day if that's what they're feeling.
Yeah, I think that's a nice practice. It's interesting. In my first angel book, Angel Insights, I talk about praying for strangers. And sometimes, you'll have an interaction with someone and you can, just tell they're having a really tough time. Like maybe somebody in the grocery store line or, just someone you see and you're like, man, they just seem like they're having a really rough time of it. And so for the next couple of days, whenever you think about them, you send them a little prayer blessing. But I think be careful as an empath because remember, you want to focus on yourself. You don't want to be too focused on other people. And also, you don't want to try and manage, control, or manipulate other people's energy or emotions. They have a right to their own emotional and energetic experience. So empaths can be a little more prone to codependency and trying to manage other people because they can feel their energy and emotions in themselves. But it's really a much more powerful practice to just stay centered in your own energy and focus on something else and say, okay, they're not doing well. What else can I focus on?
I know managing our inner peace is a job within itself, so I can understand that.
Yeah, but I like what you shared there about saying blessings and prayers. And I think one of the most powerful things for empaths is to try this stuff out for yourself. Try the technique of saying prayers and blessings. That might work wonderfully for you. Or try my technique of just tuning into something different in the environment. Because, different techniques will work for different people. So that's really what's so fun about reading different books is different authors or experts might tell you different things. And it's kind of a grab bag. You pick a couple different things from each offering and different things work for different people. So, I'm a firm believer in listening to everybody and then just seeing what works for you.
Yeah, usually those prayers of, oh God, I hope this person changes doesn't really work, right?
Right. But I think what you're talking about is saying, I wish them well. I wish them grace. I wish them peace. And maybe that makes you as a compassionate empath feel a little bit better about then moving on and taking your focus elsewhere. I mean, at the end of my, some people always say to me, how can you do these one-on-one intuitive sessions with clients where you're going so deep with them and then just hang up the phone and go about your day? And, one thing I do at the end of every session that takes me 30 seconds is I just say a quick prayer for that person and for anyone who showed up in the reading, whether it was somebody from the other side, an angel or a departed loved one who showed up, or just somebody that we were talking about in their family. And that just takes me 30 seconds and then I move on with my day. But so yeah, sometimes I think saying little prayers or blessings for other people is wonderful, as long as you can let it be, I'm releasing this to God, to spirit, a higher power, to something larger than me. Now I've said my prayer, I'm letting it go.
Yeah, that's so important. And I had to make the distinction because sometimes you hear people make those kind of prayers where they're praying for people to change, which is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is only about our happiness and how we're taking care of ourselves. And I felt like your book had so many great resources. And one of the things that I really liked is it talked about detoxing from gossip. Now, okay, even during this time, you get groups of people who still have a lot of gossip going on.
Right. So do you mean like friends or family groups, or just
all the above?
Well, it's weird, as I'm talking to you, my intuition is reminding me that sometimes people gossip to feel close to each other. So it's not that gossiping necessarily has a malicious intent. We always think of it as a negative thing in this puritanical way, like don't gossip. But, I think sometimes people are just trying to create intimacy, even like at the water cooler in an office. It's like, they're talking about somebody else at the office because they're trying to become close with their coworker and have a common subject to bond over. So I think, and sometimes I think when we read this celebrity gossip, I think sometimes people are intrigued by a certain celebrity's life because it mirrors their own life, or they feel like they can relate to Gwyneth Paltrow or somebody in the public eye. There's something they represent to them they can relate to or they're interested by. So, but I do think it is just another way to go into the energy of someone else and their life in an unhealthy way. And sometimes when we're gossiping and so focused on someone else, it's, because we don't want to be with ourselves. It's a way to escape what's going on in our life, either because we're bored or we're unhappy or we're overstimulated. We're so happy we're overstimulated, whatever's going on. So I think the gossip detox is just a powerful way to remind yourself not to so constantly go into the energy of other people. Because like you said, you get on the phone with a relative and they want to gossip about cousin such and such for half an hour. And then it's like, oh my God, did we really help cousin such and such or resolve anything? Or were we just like wasting half an hour of our lives,
Oh yeah. Just like, oh boy, how do we get out of this? Talk about, how to cook a casserole or something. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting when you say, how do we get out of it? Because every once in a while, this is very rare, but occasionally I'll have in a session, a client will want to talk a little bit too much about someone else in their life and what's going on with them. And so I think whether you're in casual conversation with someone or you're a therapist, I don't know, a professional talking with somebody and they're wanting to gossip about something that feels like a tangent, I just gently bring them back to questions about themselves. Well, how does that make you feel? Or what happened? That kind of thing, to bring them back into their own energy about it. Because I think often gossiping is just a waste of time at its worst, and time is precious, really.
Yeah, one thing that I know is famous that empaths do, and you talk a little bit about this in your book, about how to determine if an emotion is yours or somebody else's. And I think sometimes empaths can get a little hung up on feeling something, but they don't ask the questions like, oh, is this mine or is this somebody else's?
Right. And I think can be particularly important when, the emotion is uncomfortable. Like sometimes it's fun if something really wonderful happens to a friend and you want to just open up and feel all the yumminess, like, oh, I'm at their wedding and, oh, they just emailed me and told me about this project. They got green light, It's like, yeah, I want to dance around the room. I want to feel the joy. I'm smiling the rest of the evening and I just feel warm in my heart, for them. I think it's even more important to realize when you're taking on the energy of others, when it's uncomfortable, like you're really anxious. And then you have to kind of backtrack and stop with yourself and put your hand over your heart and say, why am I so anxious? And, that's when your intuition can be really powerful. You might get an image of your husband and the night before your partner was, kind of ranting about how nervous they are about a meeting that's coming up at their work. And you realize that triggered you and you were taking on a lot of their anxiety, and it's not really your own, or you're worried about a loved one who's struggling with an addiction. And, when you put your hand over your heart, you hear their name or you see their face and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm too much in their life right now. And I'm carrying this anxiety about them that's really, or the depression that really they're feeling. So I think just getting clear on where the emotion is coming from is an amazingly powerful way to help release it. I mean, just the awareness and the recognition itself.
So where do you see some of the common mistakes that empaths make? Because I know you have people that reach out to you to kind of get insight on this.
Yeah, I think the common mistake empaths make is not realizing when they're in someone else's energy. Particularly, I think with codependency. I think codependency is, we're in relationship with other people. So I guess codependency is just part of it to a degree. Of course, we're going to care about other people and we're going to go into their energy. And, this isn't an exact science or anything, but I think sometimes you'll get a very sensitive person who is kind of constantly worrying or constantly trying to manage a whole family full of people in their mind and in their heart. And it's like, oh my Lord, no wonder they're run down, So I think it is that thing where you, as you have said several times in the interview, just reminding yourself, like, how often have I thought about this person today? Or how often have I worried about them? How often have I, as you said, been angry that they aren't living their life in a different way? And how many prayers have I said today that I hope they'll change? Kind of being aware of where your thoughts and energy are throughout the day, because it's amazing how easy it can be for them to leave you.
So how do empaths really identify their purpose?
Yeah, I mean, by purpose, do you mean, and I know this is stuff you're trying to highlight for the book, so I thank you. But I just wanted to clarify their purpose, meaning their life purpose, or what's the purpose of them being sensitive?
It can be any of those. I'll let you choose.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because obviously when people get intuitive sessions with me, that's one of the typical questions I get is, what is my purpose? And often the angels, I'll hear things like, oh, this person is a natural teacher, they're a natural artist. But, often the angels will use kind of umbrella, terms for people. Like, they're meant to lead, they're meant to guide, they're meant to nurture, they're meant to be a caretaker, they're meant to communicate. So I think with your purpose, it's a lot broader than we give ourselves credit for. And as far as why you're an empath, or why maybe in a spiritual or philosophical or existential sense are you wired to feel more, I think you really have to look at your own life and go to your own intuition, and see how it informs and helps you, and how it informs and helps others. Does it help you in your job? Does it help you as a parent? And so these are questions that I think only the individual can really answer with some very compassionate, gentle reflection.
Gosh, that is so important because I think a lot of times people are trying to find, like, what is my purpose? And especially as an empath, you feel like there's some certain message or something you should be doing. And a lot of times I think people put too much pressure on themselves going, gosh, I should be doing something.
I so agree. I'm so glad you put it that way. It's funny, I was listening to Carolyn Mace, and I know you know who that is, but just to share with the audience, she's a pretty famous spiritual teacher. She's been around a long time, and she deals a lot in Jungian archetypes, but she writes about all kinds of spirituality. But I was listening to her, a little video she shared, and she was saying how, when she was teaching workshops and, doing that kind of stuff, people would always come up to her afterwards and say, I feel like I've missed my purpose. I feel like I'm meant for something really special. And she said she always felt so bad because, she was saying, she thinks everyone's special, and no matter what you're doing, whether you are, a rocket scientist or a teacher or a parent or a barista or just a lovely person existing in the world, you are special and important and needed. So I do think we put too much pressure on ourselves that we have to somehow be a celebrity in some sense, or we have to be the best at something, or we have to be renowned. And I think spiritually, sometimes the most influential people in the, are the quiet people that just live these lovely, kind lives behind the scenes of everything. So, I would agree. Don't put pressure on yourself. And especially don't feel that just because you're an empath or a sensitive, you have to run out and be an energy healer, or you have to run out and have this Instagram account that's all about crystals, or, remember, you're an individual and everyone's different. So being an empath doesn't mean you're naturally slotted into this mold with this set of, things you have to adhere to, or certain jobs you have to have, or certain ways you have to love or be in relationship to people. It's just one facet of you, but as everyone knows, we're each so unique.
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting because I know a lot of people in the business world who are really, they're empaths, you could tell. But the thing is that they don't call it that because it doesn't fit that norm, but they identify, I think personally as an empath.
Right. And I think, when we talk about the healer archetype, this is something that's a little bit similar to what you're saying. But when we talk about people who are strong in the healer archetype, where they really do want to help people who are suffering, help people have transformations, help people heal, I think sometimes when a client comes into me as being strong in the healer archetype, I have to remind them that healers exist in every, type, every role in society. Financial institutions have healers working there. Healers are in the government. They're not just at the hospital or at the Reiki, massage parlor. They're really everywhere, and they're meant to go and be everywhere. So, don't limit yourself, and certainly don't let your sensitivity limit yourself.
No, not at all. It's a massive gift, And I thought your book really helps people to kind of understand not only their giftedness, but how to walk in the world with it.
Right. And I think, we all, no one's given a rule book to being a sensitive. No one's given the manual on themselves. So I try with my books to kind of give you the manual about intuition and sensitivity and being an empath. And, if you identify as an earth angel, all this kind of stuff, give you some kind of tools and loose rules and guidelines to go by. And I think that's the cool thing, is there's so many other people doing the same thing. And sometimes, maybe if you're first discovering your sensitivity, that can be quite overwhelming. Like, well, oh my gosh, whose book do I get, or what do I follow? I think follow the synchronicities. What shows up for you? What really resonates with you at the bookstore when you open it up and read a few pages? So it's just that reminder that not everything works for everyone, and not every author or expert or spiritual teacher is right for every person, which is kind of fun. That's why I like it when people say different things, because different things will resonate and work with different people.
Yeah, for sure. It's so great because there's so much information out there, your books and just a lot of information. I know you do also sessions with people to kind of help them. So there's lots of resources that people can use in moving forward. I would love for you to share with us. I know empaths have a really tough time when it comes to their energy. What are some ways that empaths can nurture their energy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you're right. It's one of the top things that empaths are concerned about. And this is something where this is my take on it. And it is slightly different. Some people will say, oh, I'm big into meditation and all that stuff. But some people will say, well, you've got to build this bubble of pink light around you, and you have to build these energy shields. And I think that works for certain people. It really obviously does. It's a very popular tool. But for me, what works and what I always recommend to clients is really the grounding, earthy stuff of, are you eating right? Are you eating several meals a day so your blood sugar is stable? Are you taking supplements that you need to take? Have you worked with a naturopath or a doctor about your vitamin and mineral levels, your hormone levels? Are you getting enough sleep? Do you have someone you can talk to about your emotions? Do you have joy in your life? Do you have time to be playful? Do you have space in your life to relax? So I think sometimes when, empaths will feel like their energy is off, or something is off with them. Their instinct is to go straight to the energy. Something's off in my energy. Remember, something could be off in your physical system. It doesn't mean that it's wildly off or you're really ill. It could just mean that there's, something in your physical body or with your physical routines throughout the day that isn't working. And that can affect your energy hugely. So I always say to empaths, if you're feeling off, don't just assume it's your energy. It could be your hormones, or it could be that you're not getting enough sleep, or that you're too stressed out because you're working too hard. So remember, my advice is to first look at the basic earthly stuff of your life, because it has a huge impact on how you feel.
Oh, that's such great advice. It's so true. I mean, how often do you hear like empaths kind of like, oh, I'm not quite sure to do with my energy. I feel frazzled or what have you. And, there's simple techniques that can be used, and you kind of go through that.
Yeah. And I think I have a section in the book about, triggers for if you're feeling frazzled and overwhelmed. And so sometimes I think it's just about sitting with yourself and doing a loving self inventory and being like, well, what has frazzled me? And is there something I'm really, upset about that I haven't shared with my partner because I'm scared of their reaction? I'm scared of making them upset and then feeling it in my own system. Is that why I'm frazzled? Is it because I'm just overstimulated? I've been doing too much. I've been out in the world too much. Is it because I haven't been taking good care of my physical body? So, there are some little checklists, a lot of checklists in the book that you can go through and kind of ask yourself and sit with to try and determine, well, why the heck am I frazzled? I got to know why. Before I have to know why I'm frazzled if I want to change it.
Well, the world is changing so much, and people now, I mean, before we had like work and home were separate for most folks. Now it seems to be really kind of combined together. Are there any special considerations for our energy that we need to kind of consider when it comes to work now?
Yes, I think you're so right. So many people now are working from home, and it's more the norm, and that seems like a trend that will kind of continue even as the world, hopefully sometime in the next year, opens up more again. Some people will just, that will become the new norm, that won't change. And one thing that I heard a lot from empath clients, especially over the summer, I think when the pandemic had been going on for a couple of months and it was starting to really wear on people, was, I have no space. I had some empath clients who had children and they had spouses, and then, okay, my mother-in-law came to stay, and they're working from home, and they would call me from their car in the garage and say, this is the only place I could go to have my session, because there's no place in the house. And really what I talk about the empaths need is a sanctuary. And it can be a common room. It doesn't mean that you have to have a room in your home that's entirely yours, that your roommates or your pets or no one ever goes into but you. If you have that, that's lovely. But if you don't, you can turn your bathroom into a little empath sanctuary and just tell your roommates or your pets or the kids or whomever, I'm in here taking a bath for 45 minutes. You got to use the other bathroom. It's a no-fly zone. And then you're listening to a podcast, you're taking a bath, the lighting is low, you've got something that smells nice and, some incense or some bath salts. So it's just about creating a sanctuary environment where you can drop into a low stimulation setting. And if you're always at home, and whether there's a lot of people there or not, you might live on your own and say, gosh, my work is everywhere now. It's all spread over the kitchen table. And, make a place in your apartment or your home where it is a sanctuary, whether it's outside on your porch or it's, a corner of your bedroom that you can go to, and it can be where you pull away from all of that.
That's so important to have that space, that little, even if it's for 5 minutes, that little area in that space where you can just have your time.
Yeah, and it's taking mindful breaks throughout the day, I think, is really important. And as you said, just 5 or 10 minutes where again you come home to yourself, where you say, well, let me check my favorite astrology site, let me just make myself a cup of tea. Let me put on a song and dance around the apartment for 5 minutes, in between tasks or in between roles. It's really important that empaths give themselves those gentle breaks where there's a low stimulation break several times throughout the day. They can come home to themselves and just take a beat.
So, my goodness, I mean, there's so much in your book and there's so much great information. What are some things that you want our listeners to really highlight, when they pick up your book? Because I know it's different for everybody, but I'm sure there's like a meditation or a prayer that really stands out to you that maybe you use all the time.
Well, one of the fun things that I put in the book, a cute little exercise that's actually quite powerful, is having an empath talisman. So this is a fun little exercise where it's having a physical object that is a representation of being grounded for you. So it could be a little crystal you have, or a little stone that's made in the shape of a heart, or a seashell that you found, when you were on a trip with your nephew one summer. It can be any little special object that you can hold in the palm of your hand. And then when you're feeling frazzled, like say you're a waitress and it's your first shift at this busy restaurant and I've got my empath talisman in my little pocket here. Or, I'm going to be talking to a family member on the phone tonight that I know really triggers me. I'm going to grab my empath talisman first and hold it and take a few breaths while I'm on the phone. It will remind me to stay grounded. And help me stay grounded. Or maybe I have to call about my student loan. I'm really nervous. My student loan payments are going to start up again next year. I'm so nervous to make this call. Okay, I've got my Heartstone. Okay, as a reminder, I'm connected to something larger than myself. I'm okay. I'm grounded. I'm safe. This is giving me the courage to make that call. So physical objects can be really important to empaths, especially even just beauty therapy, making sure that your environment is really aesthetically pleasing, whatever that means to you. Some people love a lot of colors. Some people are like, oh, I want my room to be all neutral tones, but whatever makes you feel relaxed and nurtured. Remember, empaths are sensitive to their surroundings. So there are a lot of exercises in the book to just help you make sure that your surroundings are aesthetically not going to drain you that way.
Yeah, that's such an important piece. A lot of times people never even consider that their surroundings could be draining their energy.
Right. And I think it does, whether it's just like, I'm sick of this room. I hate these curtains. We've all had those things in our space where it's like, I am so sick of that couch, or I hate these curtains, or these walls are, too light or too dark or whatever. And it's not about spending a ton of money. It's just about being aware of what in your environment is draining you, whether it's clutter or something that's aesthetically displeasing, or the chair that you work in every day that just isn't comfortable. Just being aware of how much that can drain your energy.
I know in your book you talk about being of service and giving back. Why is that so important for empaths?
Yeah, I think it's important for everyone, simply because I think it's not about being a quote unquote good person. I think it just makes us feel good to give to others. So in some ways, giving back is selfish because, as long as you have the stamina and the energy, there'll be times in your life where you're going through so much personally that it's like, man, I really have to pull back on what I give to others because I'm drained. I got to take care of myself. But then there's those times where you're like, I'm feeling pretty good. Then giving to others and being of service is such a wonderful way to connect to other people and be in community and feel bonded with other people, whether you know them or not. And then for empaths, because you're so sensitive to other people's energy and emotions, when you help someone and they say, thank you, or you see the relief on their face, oh my gosh, you get so many great good vibe emotions going through you as a sensitive person.
I think that's so important. And there's so many different opportunities to be able to give back and help. I mean, there's like Red Cross, they've got all these different, places you can donate time, what have you. And I love how you share that because you're an empath doesn't mean that you need to start going out and healing a bunch of people. You really let everyone off the hook with that because, I mean, our healing presence can be at a soup kitchen and yeah, here we're in the time of COVID, but there could be like there are different ways to volunteer and be of service that some you don't have to physically be there.
Right, exactly. And especially right now, sometimes the best thing to do is to by keeping yourself safe, you keep others safe. So, but everyone has different risk levels and everyone's in different communities. So, we all have to, again, look at things on an individual level about what we can do right now and how we can help. And I do think that, your first priority is to yourself, because remember, the better you're taking care of yourself, the more you'll have to give. A lot of times when people who are very compassionate, say, I just don't want to give to anybody, it's because they're simply burnt out and they need to take care of themselves. So remember, the more you take good care of yourself on a regular basis, the more stamina you'll have to give to other people. So taking care of yourself first is a selfless act in that way, because if you get run down and into burnout, you're just not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah, I know that feeling well. I think many people do. You get to this place where it's like, I am so fried. What's that? We used to joke around. I'm so fried. I'm Southern fried.
Right. That's a good one.
But it's nice that you have these tools for people to use so they don't have to get to the fried state.
Yeah, and I think one of the most powerful tools is just the reminder, and there's lots of different ways I give you in the book to do it, to come home to yourself, to connect back to yourself. Because the more you're connected to yourself and your own energy, the easier it is to discern, oh man, I'm getting close to burnout. Or the easier it is to discern, hey, I think I actually really quickly understand why I'm so frazzled or drained. It's because you're so connected to yourself and to your own needs and wants and emotions that, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out why you're drained or frazzled or in burnout.
Yeah, I mean, the tips are there. Yeah, you have so many great resources in this book. I think I can touch on one more before we get going here. I was surprised that you talked about gut health in this book. I'm like, wait a minute. But I thought this is about empaths and we're talking about gut health. So what's the connection here?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's that thing where I really focus on the physical body a lot and taking good care of yourself. And I was pretty general when I wanted to emphasize how important gut health, I think, is for everyone. But I was very general in the guidance I gave because I'm a firm believer in doing your own research, talking to your own healthcare providers. But just a reminder that some people do have slight food sensitivities. Some people maybe have an imbalance of flora in their gut, and just how much this can affect your whole immune system and the rest of your body. So if you suspect that gut issues are something that's flaring for you and something you need to look at, do your own research. There's tons of books and articles about gut health and diets and supplements. But really, I think the best thing to do is find an expert to work with, a healthcare provider, whether it's your doctor or a GI person or a naturopath, but someone who resonates with you and gets results and speaks your language as far as how you want to handle your gut health. I have adrenal health in there as well, because again, I think that sometimes empaths could feel that their energy is off, as we discussed before, but maybe there's something a little off with their adrenals and they've just been stressed out for too long and they're run down and they need to, again, work with someone on how to rebuild those.
Yeah, to go ahead and have some help with that. My goodness. I mean, there's so much great information in your book. What final thoughts do you want to leave with our listeners?
Just that I think sensitivity is, as you said, it's something to be celebrated. It's a good thing. So don't be nervous if you're sensitive, or if you've recently discovered you're sensitive, or if you've gone through a sensitivity growth spurt and your sensitivity is increasing. Keep reminding yourself, this is positive. This is a good thing. It's wonderful to be sensitive. It's wonderful to feel and perceive more. It's great. Just, you do need a roadmap, and you need to know what the pitfalls are, and finding some tools that are unique for you. And, tools and these certain routines and techniques can really make a huge difference. So don't feel overwhelmed like you have to suddenly change your whole life or suddenly do a million different things. Just pick a couple things that you think will work for you, and just a couple small changes can make a huge difference.
Well, my goodness, Tanya, I mean, we can talk all day long easily. We haven't even touched all the things in this book, of course. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about self-care for empaths?
Yeah, thank you. So the book Self-Care for Empaths, it is available. Try your local bookstore. A lot of local bookstores, if they're closed to the public, they're doing curbside pickup. So call and see if they've got it. Barnes and Noble should have it online and in stores. Amazon, of course, has it in stock. Bookshop.org. So pretty much anywhere you get books, you should be able to get Self-Care for Empaths. And then my website is called Tanya, Tanya Blessings. So that's kind of easy to remember. And there's just little tools on there for you, and all my articles from MindBodyGreen. You can get links to those there. People love my MindBodyGreen articles. And then next year in 2021, hopefully in January or February, I am going to set up a monthly crowdcast kind of hangout for sensitive people. So if you go to my website, Tanya Blessings, you'll find a newsletter, and it's a free newsletter. You can subscribe, and I will give you information about that monthly crowdcast event that will be starting.
Well, I'm signed up for your newsletter. I highly suggest everyone do the same. It's so great. You get all this great information right in your inbox. My goodness, Tanya. I mean, we can spend all day, and I'm so glad we've had this time together. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you. And this was my pleasure.
Well, thank you, Tanya. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Self-Care for Empaths. Self-Care for Empaths is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to reach out to Tanya, you can at tanyablessings.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.